the wonderful Patricia Spears-Jones.
Cry. Wow. Well, Lorenzo Thomas, to me, has a couple of things. One was he was a mentor, and I don't have that many, so I was grateful for everything he said about my poetry, and I'm so glad that he included me amongst a whole lot of really wonderful, younger, at that point, Black American poets in extraordinary measures. Which is an amazing book. But I also had the honor and the terror of doing the Passwords lecture on Lorenzo very few weeks after his passing, and Cecilio was there. And I'm so grateful that he was there along with Ted. And they didn't beat me up, so I must have done a good job. So I'm grateful for that. I think that Chances Are Few is one of the most amazing books ever. Both versions, because I have them both, actually. And I'm going to read a couple of poems from Chances Are Few and one from Dancing on Main Street. I also think that Lorenzo Thomas had some of the best, he's kind of like, he just had some of the best titles for poems ever. So I'm not using the best of them, but other people have. And I am grateful for this, and I'm looking forward. Thank you, Alden, for getting all those poems together, and I'm looking forward to getting that book. Sugar Hill. How you like that, quadrasonic baby? When you turn these speakers up, behind this music, a breeze actually blows through the room. Man, that's how come I believe engineers truly exist, though we cannot see them. That's hilarious. And it sure is. Okay. This is from Dancing on Main Street. One of the things that no one has mentioned already, but it's very true. Lorenzo wrote amazingly beautiful poems about intimacy, or the lack thereof. And here is one of them. And it's a great title. God sends love disguised as ordinary people. We never quite could tell strength from stupidity, pride in perseverance, the point where stubbornness purchased a harvest of futility. If the body has forgotten how to sleep, what chance has thought to teach its subtleties like tenderness or faith? All that could matter is the replicating warmth of flesh, wordless and beyond translation to idea or category. Nothing numerical and yet not boundless either. Nothing so grand or abstract. In other words, we were not brutes for lack of feeling, not sorrowful and spiteful isolation, not lonely yet, but damaged by avoiding touch, being only smart enough to trust that there's some gifted outcast family somewhere, a troupe of the Jollies, that still performs the music that we need to reconnect our feet to dirt, to fling our arms like windmills spinning in dusted twilight. The point being not that you beat yourself up approaching what so and so has done for you, but that you finally remember you've been her gypsy too. And one of the most interesting things about Lorenzo, of course, was that he was one of the founding members of Umbra. And Umber Workshop is, you know, I think David Henderson, I know David Henderson's got to be here somewhere. It's like, at this point, it's almost like a mythic thing. But it also was the place where I think a lot of the ways in which another way of looking at Black poetry was able to grow, and to give people like me and any number of people in this room another way to approach being a Black American, being a poet, looking at words in a different way, playing with language in a way that was unexpected and yet still told the truth. And I'm grateful to all of those people. Thank you, David. Thank you, Lorenzo, wherever you are, roaming around. This is for his good friend, Tom Dent, who was one of the original members and who is, as many of you know, from New Orleans, and who passed away a long, long time ago. And this is also from Chances Are Few. Okay. Discovering America Again, in memory of Tom Dent. The world we found was not something to fall in love with, but there were people in it who watched us at our games, who warned us early African veneers and European valences could both be false and polished surfaces distracting. Armed us with corny maxims. Pride is not assumed but earned by effort properly applied. Common sense, Garvey, Washington, Du Bois were men like those you meet in the street, and sent us on the way, expecting us to be explorers, space travelers in song, screaming or mellow, and caravans of ageless aspirations to memorize exuberant manifest of semi-precious words. Discovering America Again, we found the simplest of all mysteries called speech retains the register of fear. Encountering what we do not know, we know, disguised as other people. They are still there, those watchers watching you, discovering America again. Don't be afraid. Someone has walked this way before. All the world's music in her hands under the starlight that she wished could lead a way to freedom, or at least a space to be, as newborn as tomorrow, forgiven as today. Someone has walked this way before. Who learned the secret? Someone has walked this way before. A man who knew that speech is breath made lovely, shaped and shaping, volume expanding both inside and out, in the quick transfer of sight and feeling into sound and sense sometimes. Someone has walked this way before. My friend who was my friend, a man who spoke with people, who asked you questions so you could breathe. And the next reader, I hope, will be Erica Hunt, who's going to read one of Lorenzo's greatest poems.
Good evening. I echo everyone's thanks for this occasion to let Lorenzo's words linger in the air. In his absence, there's a presence that we can kind of recite and put through our bodies in some way. Thank you, Alden, for bringing this volume together, an act of love. I think thinking that everybody should do that. You know, take someone's poetry and, you know, somehow put it out into the world. It's part of that, the practice. I met Lorenzo. I met Alden. But I met Lorenzo again when I was a baby poet in San Francisco. He had come out to read at the San Francisco State Poetry Center. And at that point, I was filling in on a radio program called In the American Tree, and it was played on KPFA. It was a poetry program, and we would interview poets. And I interviewed Lorenzo. This might have been 1980, 79, 80. And then he had a few days to spend in San Francisco, so we walked everywhere, uphill and down. And I think we flirted a little bit. Nothing came of it, but we talked poetry. And still, you know, a little tension. And he, you know, in that time, he taught me a lot. You know, he really was much versed in poetry. But the thing I'll be grateful to him about is that he really called me poet. He saw me as a poet, one of the first people. I'm going to read The Bathers. The Bathers has a lot of different kind of imagery in it. Cecilio's painting graces the cover of that book. It's a collage, yep. And it's also, there's some pieces of it about Birmingham, Alabama, and what happened in the park when the police turned the hoses and the dogs on the demonstrators there. So there's some of that imagery. And there's also some imagery that seems to, you know, go in and out of the myth of Horus and the Nile. So, The Bathers. We turned to fire when the water hit us. Something berserk regained an outmoded regard for sanity. While in the fire station, no one thought a flame, fame, or fortune did them. We did them a fortune. We did them a favor, just being ourselves inside of them. Holy day, children. In the nation coming, your children will learn all about that. But the water creep about us. Water hit us with force. We saw a boy transformed into a lion. His tail is vow, the syllable of love. A master before fellow craft, the summit of the royal arch. Lotus, mover on the face of the waters. Sleepless Horus, watch me as I lie, curtained with stars when ye arise, and part the skies, and mount the royal bark. They said the ancient words in shameful English. Their hearts rose up like feathers in the hidden place. And Horus steps into the flood of noon, shedding his light upon the worlds. It was Birmingham. It happened. Week after week in the papers, the proof appeared in their faces, raising the water. Week after week, seeing the same moment grow clearer, raising the water, filling the vessel, raising the water, filling the vessel. Oh, electromagnetic light, ancient hands bearing water, The star broke over the tub. All righteousness, not deceived by sunshine nor the light from a man's desire, deceived by desire, so that in the moment the people cast light from their bodies, light being the white premeditation, the simplest fashion. What they want is light. Another source to equip their dry want fire, light, space, light, discretions of neon, at least so to appear natural where the sun is, 360 degrees of light. Consumed in the labors of comfort that cries for the balm of all that is natural desire, bathing in the dark, the water glowing, and the plastic curtain suddenly heated, as another expels past satisfactions, cold as she washes gas tears from her man's eyes. We hate you. Hot on her soft thigh, like the dog's breath at noon by the courthouse. We hate you for that. But ancient hands raised this water. As the street's preachers have a good understanding, hear them. Oh, Israel, this, oh, Israel, that. Down here in this place, crying for common privilege in a comfortable land. Their anger is drawing the water. Their daughters drawing the water. Their kindness is laving and oiling its patience. That day, the figures on the trucks inspired no one. Someone threw the water on their heads. They were Baptists. And that day, Horace bathed him in the water again. And Orisha walked amid the waters with hatchets, where Allah's useful white men came there bearing the water, and made our street Jordan. And we stepped into our new land as it has been since the first time, through the tear of a mother. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to read 3 poems, which are 3 different moods and slightly different locations, and all deal with community. The first one is called Mr. Anderson. Mr. Anderson would always tell us that if a black man is the first to cross your doorstep, New Year's, you'll have good luck all year long. Each New Year's Day was earlier eyes for him. Up and down our block, he'd go knocking on sleepy neighbors' doors. Mr. Anderson was not the sort of man to leave his neighbor's good fortune up to chance. So let's say this is a poem of the street. It's called Back in the Day. When we were boys, we called each other man, with a long N, pronounced as if a promise. We wore felt hats that took a month to buy in small installments, shiny floor shines or Stacy Adams shoes, carried out dancing gait, and flashed our challenge, breathing our aspiration into words. We harmonized our yearnings to the night, and when the old folks on the porches dare complain, we cussed them out under our breaths and walked away, and once a block away, held learned speculations about the character of their relationship with their mothers. It's true that every now and then we killed each other, borrowed a stranger's car, burned down a house, but most boys went to jail for knocking up a girl he really, truly, deeply loved. Really, truly, deeply. But was too young, too stupid, poor, or scared to marry. Since then, I've learned some things don't never change. The breakfast chatter of the newly met, our disappointment with the world as given. Today, news and amusements filled with automatic fire, misspelled alarms, sullen posturings, and bellowed anthems. Our scholars say young people doubt tomorrow. This afternoon, I watched a group of young men or tall boys, handsome and shining with the strength of future. Africa's stubborn present to a declining white man's land, lamenting as boys always did and do. Time to be moving on. Some things don't never change. And how, back in the day, well, things were somehow better. They laughed and jived, slapped hands, and called each other dog. The last poem takes place in a club. It's the 5 Spot, which was, I'm sure many of you know, an important jazz club that opened up in the late 50s on the Lower East Side and was very much the place where free jazz or the advanced jazz developed with such figures, the older figure Thelonious Monk, Cecil Taylor being very important to it, and John Coltrane are sort of the central figures. What's interesting about the poem is none of these figures are mentioned, but there are many important jazz figures and all part of the new music mentioned in the poem. I'm not going to give you a lot of references to just name of a lot of musicians. And so I guess just sort of accept that. But one name I want to mention is, at one point, there'll be a line about Izzy. And Izzy is Izzy Termini, who was one of the owners of the 5 Spot, and was, very much responsible for passing the music on, and maybe sometimes not with profit. The poem's called An Education, and everybody who went to the 5 Spot, or the people I've talked to, always talked about being in education, about learning about the new music, about learning about art. So here's the poem. An Education. Our academy was the 5 Spot's fire door, where Sonny Murray, soft-spoken Socrates, in frayed blue jeans, the essence of the blues. No love, he says, no money. His own music too strange, even for jam sessions in the afternoon. Amid a traffic jam of spirits, interpreted the flames of beauty, flashing through the door, Mingus searing. So caliente in the house. Izzy always left that door ajar. Blue corona of Ted Gerson's horn, sinuous pharaonic bass clarinet, shouting out Eric's our alarm, octave above octave, beneath the rumbling earthquake, Daniel Richards' drum and bells of Jackie Byard. Light bending summer heat outdoors, the smoldering blue room. Once a month I had enough to pay the cover charge. But the music was never so sweet as those hot nights when we eavesdropped, as genius told the spirit like it is, just how we humans feel. Thank you. Now the wonderful Tracie Morris.
Hey, hi. Lot one could say about Lorenzo Thomas. I'll just say I'm going to read 3 poems, and one of the marks of a great artist is when they can write about something really specific and it can be timeless. So the first poem I'm going to read is called Inauguration. The land was there before us, was the land. Then things began happening fast, because the bombs us have always work. Sometimes it make me think, God must be one of us, because us has saved the world. Us gave it a particular set of regulations based on 1, undisputable acumen, 2, carnivorous fortunes, delicately referred to here as bull market, and of course other irrational factors, deadly smoke thick over the ice caps, our man in Saigon, Lima, Tokyo, etc., etc. Dirge for Amadou Diallo. It is hard to have your son die in a distant land. If they said he was a soldier, we would pray. That way we always pray that his would be the final sacrifice, and we would understand. Questions will fill that churning emptiness shaped like a boy, grown beautifully into a man. There'll be no answers, still we'll understand. If he was a true believer or missionary, apostle or revolutionary, ardent, altruist or visionary, these mean times, maybe instead a hard and marvelous man, a mercenary, then we would dread his noble loss or petty glory, and we would understand. It is hard to have your son die in a distant land. If accident or heart attack, we could blame chance or curse the earthbound ignorance, vow to concoct new mythologies that wouldn't forge us such raw cruelties, marching out hope in coffles towards the grave. We understand. If someone said he was this son, a prodigal, the kind of man who desperately needs the vice of suffering and hurt and desiccation, some eccentricity to hold him firm, to help him shape his heart into an instrument of praise, the kind of man who dares to summon whirlwinds to winnow wisdom from sophistication, oh, we would wail, hold our hands, astonished by the wastefulness of fate, this repetitious wastefulness of fate, and understand. But now they tell me of a peaceful man, a mother's son, a father's pride, seeking to study in the learned halls of a distant, splendid, powerful, affluent land. A young man murdered at the hand of men sworn to uphold the law, not thugs or bandits. And there's no justice, there's no recompense. Oh no. In spite of all our history of terror in the world, uncountable eons of sorrow of the world, oh no, oh no. We do not understand. It is hard to have your son die in a distant land, and harder still when we can't understand. Equinox. There may be other notes you recognize. Sailors at night watch, soldiers on picket. But we are shepherds now, and it is spring. And we are talking, okay, so we're not shepherds, but this is a useful play. Like shepherds on a dark hillside, drawing lines between the stars, we reach beyond ourselves to meet ourselves. Or are we talking just to fill the space between us, to get over a century that ends in the fireworks and the worldwide efforts to undo the future? Then we were dancing. This is my real life. This day is still wet from the morning's rain. Pavements begin to steam. Killer 1970s guitars rattling the dash, driving west into a Majorca landscape. The city in the rear view, clasped by night, abandoned by the sun. At best, a graveyard chants. Time to get your grip and move on. Oh, preach us some pleasant nonsense, por favor. Amuse us, oh Lord. We are the audience for your sneak preview of heaven. Thrust into this florid maze, trust curiosity to find its way to cleverness. A long-awaited legion of idolaters arriving after giddy pilgrimage, then came the prismed vision as we saw the world through tears. 2. No, it is spring. These days of rain, not biblical, but more than this ground could take. Standing water everywhere. After 3 days of rain, they look like lakes, these fields near Hockley, fields waiting for cotton, corn or soy, tract homes or condominiums or little malls, glimmering like fish scales in the sun as a sheet of egrets settles. As a sheet of egrets settles in besides the lakes that will not be there in 3 days, in fields that will not be there in 3 years. And we were talking. Shepherds or boys of useful play. You find the married men at 4 o'clock leaning against their trucks beside the road, sharing half pints and 6-packs, or in the city at a cocktail lounge trying to prolong the day's escape. There are others who are not here. Men who have years to speak of, farmers, retired mechanics. Old men gather at breakfast to direct the day into its starting gate, booting the sun along a slotted course above the never-ending shadow puppet dance of power, the energetic pettiness of mundane business. These high priests of expected disappointments raise their polyphonic song, life is unpleasant but predictable. If this is solace, these men standing up against the wall, these are the guardians of future pathways, but it is spring. 3, you feel like skipping, but the costume wants a more processional step. Will there be ruins where we walk? Will our footfalls echo purposes? Talking together as gray-haired men with the guy you looked up at the stars with when you were boys, and wondering if there's a God, a girl, a goal, a meaning to the universe, a knowing now. You really do not know how much more, that you really do not know much more than you did back then. These conversations, like a diamond's facets, like sunlight on fields, suddenly make lakes, the subjects always the same, yet it seems transparently deflecting something deeper, more personal, demanding, more attention. When you think it over, as you will, inventing, what you should have said, what you should have said. Too late for that now. And next time will be deceiving. A boy's job to listen to the old men's lies and learn music. A boy's job is to listen to the old men lie and learn the music. I never been nowhere where the old blues singers been, but I swear to my soul, I don't want to go there again.